Let us pray. Father, thank you so much for this evening. I pray that you may guide us to understand your word. Instruct us in truth and in righteousness is our prayer, trusting and believing in Jesus' name. Amen. Today, I want us to talk about giving and budgeting. And I want to, I've been saying that I want to take the shortest amount possible so that we can have time for discussions and questions. Today, I will actually endeavor to do that. I also want to start by saying that on the subject of giving, I did make a few assumptions that we are aware of certain things in the Bible that God has established already, especially on giving. But we'll go on ahead, and then if you have questions, we can look at them as we go. I just want to remind you again that God has given us the gift, the talent of money, right now on this side of eternity to prove us and to check whether we will be ready for the life to come, that we are being proven today. God is checking, will we be faithful with the mammon of unrighteousness? And if you're faithful with the mammon of unrighteousness, then God will trust you with eternal riches in the kingdom of heaven. If you're faithful with the 50,000 you earn today every month, God will definitely trust you with the gold that will be placed with the gold that will be placed in your building or in your new mansion in heaven. He will definitely trust you with the employments of heaven. The Bible teaches us several things, about money. But the core thing that I want us to remember, even as we are learning to invest, to save, to manage debt, at the end of the day, we are not all doing these things so that we idolize money or so that we despise it. So let us avoid extremes on both sides, and remember to know that the talent that has been given to us is so that we can increase our capacity to invest in our families, in the cause of God, and to meet the needs of other people. Today, I want us to talk about giving. And the Bible teaches and tells us that everything, the book of Leviticus chapter 27, verse 30 to 34, Leviticus 27, 30 to 34 says, every tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or of the fruit of the trees, is of the Lord's. It is holy to the Lord, that the tithe is holy. God established the tithe in the book of Numbers chapter 18, when he told the children of Israel that I'm going to set apart the Levites, and I'm going and they will not be earning an income like the rest of you. They will be working in my house. And he says that I am going to give them an inheritance. And he says every tithe in Israel is an inheritance. It is a return to the service of the Lord, and it will be what the Levites will be partaking of. And so those who are given the charge to serve in the house of God, God knew that to be able to be able to allow his cause to continue here on earth, he will actually use the tithe and the offering that came from the children of God. But at the root of this all, why would God actually give us this system? Why would God tell us to go and give him? I mean, there are so many things God could have done. He says that the cattle in 1,000 hills are his, right? Silver and gold is his. We've seen God providing for prophets by just allowing things to fall from heaven. Why didn't God just allow gold or sheep or ox to fall from heaven and is able to supply, which are miracles that God used to perform before? It's because God knows the human nature, and that is why he gave us the gift. It is actually a gift that has been given to us as humanity, to give to the cause of God. He's gave us the gift of giving. And I want us to tell you, I want to tell you that covetousness is a great sin today. Covetousness is a great sin today that God abhors. And I want us to read from the book of Testimonies to the Church, volume 3, page 548. She writes and says, constant self-denying benevolence is God's remedy for the conquering sins of selfishness and covetousness. God has arranged systematic benevolence to sustain his cause and relieve the necessities of the suffering and the needy. So to sustain his cause, God has given us systematic benevolence, not to run a business, not to start a business somewhere. Systematic benevolence, and for the suffering and the needs of the and for this for those who are suffering and the needs, it is also systematic benevolence. He has ordained that giving should become a habit, that it may counteract the dangerous and deceitful sin of covetousness. Continual giving, she says, starves covetousness to death. It starves covetousness to death. And she says this: systematic benevolence is designed in the order of God to tear away treasures from the covetous heart as fast as they are gained, and to consecrate them to the Lord to whom they belong. That God gave us the gift of systematic benevolence in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Why? So that he can tear away the love and the sin of covetousness. And even in the Bible, systematic benevolence has been given so that the children of Israel would not suffer the sin of covetousness. He knows it is a great sin. He knows this. God is aware. The same chapter, Ellen White writes on to say that this system is so arranged that men may give something from their wages every day. And remember, there are people who used to earn every day, and lay by for the Lord a portion of the profits of every investment, everything, every investment that comes in. You should lay aside a portion of those profits to the Lord. The constant practice of God's plan of systematic benevolence weakens covetousness and strengthens benevolence. And then he gives this warning. God understood our nature, says, if riches increase, men, even those professing godliness, says, even those who are pious, even those who appear to be holy, even those who profess godliness, she says this, set their hearts upon them. And the more they have, the less they give to the treasury of the Lord. Have you read a verse that tells us in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 17, that the heart is desperately wicked? It is desperately wicked. And so when you read these verses and these quotations that reveal to us the human nature, which God understands very well, and we are told that it is only God who searches the heart and knows it. God knows our hearts, and God knows how covetous we are. God knows that we love sin, and he knows that at the very root of it, for him to destroy this sin of covetousness, he had to give us something. It is in his care to have given us something that will help us so that we will overcome this sin of covetousness. And then it says, God knows our danger and has hedged us about with means to prevent our own ruin. That even men who appear to be holy, they will fall on this point. Why? Because covetousness lies at the very root of human nature. So God gave us a way so that we would not fall, so that we would not fall under the sin of covetousness, under the sin of covetousness. The Bible writes and says that the love of money is the root of all evil. Friends, essentially, actually, what it is saying, it is not just the mere love of money. It is not money that is wrong. It is coveting money. And so, in other words, we can actually rewrite the book of First Timothy, the verse 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 5, and say that covetousness, it is the mother of all sin. Covetousness is the mother of all sin. And God abhors. The book of Psalms 10:3 tells us that the covetous, whom the Lord does what? He abhors them. Why? He has created men in his very image, and from his very nature, at the root of his very nature, God is a giver. So he abhors anyone who is the very opposite of his nature, which is a covetous person, a person who just wants to uphold and hold things for their sake, and hold things for their sake. And covetousness, when I was just reflecting on covetousness being the mother of all sin, I was just thinking of the 10 commandments, and you can trace all the 10 commandments and you will find covetousness at the very root of it. That's why when the Bible says the love of money is the root of all sin, it is because it is covetousness that is at the actual root. Why would someone, the first commandment, you shall have no other gods before me? A covetous person will not only have God, but will also have other gods around them. They will desire even power, which they perceive that other gods will give them. That is a covetous person. A covetous person will not only go and worship images and graven images that have been set up, but will also bow to their coin. They will bow and honor the coin, the image that has been set up in the coin. The third commandment, a covetous person will actually walk around and in the name of God steal, and in the name of God take away that which does not belong to them. And they will actually come with an excuse that, you know what, they are preserving either the kingdom of God. It is at the root of it covetousness. A covetous person, I think there's a story I read, I think it was sometime last year. This Indian man who was so wealthy, and the son deceived him to do what? To go, the son deceived him so that he can, the son can take up all the wealth that he had, and that man lives as a very poor man today. The son made him sign out all the money that he had, and he lives today as a beggar, though he was a millionaire in India. It's a very famous story that broke out sometime last month. I think he wanted to pursue a lawsuit and he was seeking for advice. A very old man, a covetous person, does not even honor their mother and father. A covetous person will go on working on the Sabbath. Why? They want to make more money than they make on the first 5 days of the week. And a preacher that I really like listening to, once said that God does not provide on the Sabbath day. So if you go working on the Sabbath so that you can gain something, it must not be God. It must be someone else who's providing for you. Why? God says you collect on the 6 days, and on the 5th day you collect twice. Why? So that on the 7th day you go and rest. So if you go on the 7th day and you go out in the land collecting manna and you find manna, that must not have come from God. If you're collecting money on the Sabbath, it's not coming from God, but it is the root of it all is covetousness. We kill because people are coveting. Yesterday, my husband brought to my attention, I think, the story of a twin who, it's a story in the US, in Orange County, that happened a few years ago. A twin who killed another twin so that they can take up their personality, and they were so envious of their twin. They wanted to just become like their twin because their twin was more successful. Covetousness, the root of all sin. And covetousness is so subtle. It is so subtle that you find yourself not giving to the cause of God. Why? You'll hear Paul writes and says, you have seen how we have come to you, how we have behaved ourselves before you, how we were diligent. In verse 5, he says, for neither at any time used we flattering words, as you know, nor, says, nor a cloak of covetousness. Covetousness can even have a cloak. Those people who say, I cannot give to the cause of God right now because my family. What? My family needs this or that. They even come in the name of their family. Covetousness wears excuses of family, of needs, of work, or a what, or there. And then you say, that's why I cannot give. That's why my tithe cannot increase. That's why my offering is in this manner or that manner. Does God actually want all this money from us? The answer is actually no. Everything that is in this world belongs to God. It all belongs to God. The silver is his, the gold is his. He can provide for his cause if he wanted to. He's only given us the gift of giving so that it can kill a nature that is within us, a nature of covetousness that will lead us to ruin, that will make us disobey all the 10 commandments. And so he gives us the gift of giving. Everything belongs to God. He says, every beast Every beast of the forest is mine, and the cattle upon 1,000 hills, it is his, it is his. He even says sacrifice and even your offerings. I don't desire those things, please. I don't even need those things. The only thing I need is obedience. It is obedience. It is obedience that God requires. Obedience, but giving has been given to us so that God can starve the sin of covetousness. So how are we to give? I think I will speak about tithe and offering, but this is where I've said I've made assumptions that we know from the word of God that the 10% belongs to Jesus Christ. It belongs to Jesus Christ. What about our offering? How much should we give? We will look at it when we look at budgeting shortly. But I wanted to talk about something that I've seen has been prevailing within the church of God. And I've seen people bringing it up and giving excuses for how to order their tithe. And I wanted to debunk that view that people quote this quotation from Spirit of Prophecy erroneously to defend how and where they take their tithe. It is this quotation, I don't know if you've come across it, but it says that the Lord has shown me that the experience which your father and I have passed through in poverty and deprivation in the early days of our work has given to me a keen appreciation and sympathy for others who are passing through similar experiences of want and suffering. And she's speaking about evangelists. You know, there are people, there are pastors today who are on the payroll, but there are also evangelists who have gone into the cause of God and into the work of God, but they are not on the church payroll, for example. And at this time, systematic benevolence, when she's also writing this, had not also been properly established in the church. And where I see workers in this cause that have been true and loyal to the work, who are left to suffer, it is my duty to speak in their behalf. If this does not move the brethren to help them, then I must help them, even if I am obliged to use a portion of my tithe in doing so. And people quote often and say, you know, Ellen White even used her tithe to actually give for mission work. You know, Ellen White used her tithe to do this and to do that. Friends, the tithe, as we read in the book of Leviticus and in the book of Numbers, was established for the cause of God, to minister to those who were serving in the cause of God, who had been chosen primarily to serve in the cause of God and had been ordained for that particular work. Those who were serving in the temple, the priests in the temple, the Levites in the temple. And when God established systematic benevolence, even in our church, it is so that it can also cater for those church officials that had been ordained to serve and to give of the bread of life to the children of God and to serve and to advance the cause of God. Now, people will quote this and say, but even if Ellen White took and she gave to the poor, Ellen White took from her tithe and she did this and she did that. Now, I want to also pause there and also tell you something. Do you know something? Please forgive me for saying this. Probably you will never invite me, but I will tell you the truth. Even Hosea was called to marry a harlot. Ezekiel, we are told at some point, God tells him that, you know, prepare yourself for I am going to kill your wife. Not in those exact words, but he said, the desire of your eyes is going to die, as a lesson to the children of Israel. What Hosea had been called to do was not what the church had been called to do. What a prophet has been given in vision to do is not necessarily a general direction for the whole church. The general direction for the whole church exists for the church on what they ought to do. And we have to obey God in the order he has established in his church. So we cannot say that I will take my tithe here and I will take my tithe there. Tithe has already been organized for where it is supposed to be taken. It belongs to the church. Whether it is misused, whether it is mismanaged, it is not our business to know. Our work is to obey God and lift up his name. And we will not use Ellen White's experience where she was shown by God what she ought to do And her direction as a prophet of God does not mean the general direction for all individuals. Now, unless you're a prophet and you've received a vision, or God has impressed in you individually to do this, then you do it. But we are not to go about preaching that take away the tithe from this place or that place, and then use Ellen White's quotation in this manner, where she received, and many of them, when you see this, she has received specific visions and instructions from God on how to handle her tithe. Her individual experience is not the church's general and corporate experience. Direction has already been given, and numerous times she has written that the church ought to give to the cause of God. The tithe belongs directly in the channels God has ordained. That means, therefore, friends, this tithe, when God established systematic benevolence, he established it to meet all the needs for the church. And the question was asked yesterday. I think it's the story that comes from the book of Luke, chapter 21. Book of Luke, chapter 21, when it speaks about Christ entering the temple. And when Christ entered the temple, he moved, he took a whip and he was chasing people from the temple of God. And he chased people, people who were changing money, and those who were misusing the business of God. I'm just trying to look for that portion of scripture, but I will be able to get it in due time. I think it's in the book of Luke. And I because I promised that I am going to talk about it, I will mention it today. When systematic benevolence was established, it was to meet all the needs of the Church of God. That means all the money that is required for the cause of God, it is in the pockets and it is in the hands of God's children. All the money that we need, it is in our hands. It is because many of us have failed to obey this call that has led the church to again follow ways and directions that God has not ordained for them to fund the cause of God. Church budgets, church cause, all those things are all to be funded through systematic benevolence. And when the story that appears in the Bible, when Christ is chasing the children of, is chasing the people from the temple, I think the verse necessarily says that he came in and he threw a weight and he overturned the tables. Listen to how the verse says. It says he overturned the tables of the money changers and of those who sold doves. So I will give you historical context of what was actually happening here. What the Pharisees had done and those who were leading in the temple work had done, they had said, now we have been colonized by the Romans. And the Romans have this coin, which is a secular coin. And we have our own, we cannot accept it for people to bring it to the temple of God because this is defiled. This is a secular coin. We cannot accept it. And so what did they do? They invented a currency for the temple of God. They said, this is the currency that we are going to use. And now, but because this is a different currency from the Roman currency, and the Roman currency is the one in circulation, we have to do an exchange. The same way you'd go and exchange the Kenya shillings for the dollar, so that now you can buy the currency of the temple. And once you have bought the currency of the temple, you will go and buy the doves. You'll go and buy the lamb that you need to go and give out as a sacrifice. You'll go and buy the bullock that you need to go and put out as a sacrifice. So using the currency that had been put in the temple. But what did the money changers do? It started off okay. Seemed like a noble cause. It seemed like, yes, we're just establishing a business to further the cause of God. But what eventually ended up happening is that they started manipulating the currency and the exchange rate. Today, the dollar is 100 shillings. Tomorrow, the dollar is 130 shillings. And as they manipulated the exchange rates, they worked in collusion with those people who are selling those sacrifices so that everyone can gain from it. and including small things like turtle doves. Turtle doves were supposed to be sacrifices that the poor would be able to bring to the temple for a sacrifice. They were supposed to be literally nothing. They were supposed to be bought for almost 0 shillings because they were for the poor. Even those turtle doves became extremely expensive because of the collusion of the money changers and the people who are selling these sacrifices, such that the poor, worship had been now commercialized, and it was all about money and how much you could afford. And even the system that God established, that the poor could give them something, God saw that it had all been defiled, and that's why Christ would come there, that even the poor cannot afford, because it has become a place of business. So I wanted to give that context because the question was asked very well, and people point it out to say we should not have businesses in church. We should understand what Christ actually meant, that we should not commercialize worship. We should not make it expensive for the people of God to just come in and worship, or give an offering or ask for forgiveness, or give a sacrifice. And this is where you can see the roots and the traditions of the Roman Catholic Church would stem from, where you have commercialized even forgiveness and repentance. So I wanted to clarify that even as we use it. And then I move very swiftly, and the rest you can handle in the question answer, very swiftly to budgeting, where I will mention more about giving and offering. The Bible says in the book of Luke chapter 14, verse 28 to 29, "For which of you intending to build a tower sitteth not down first and do what? And counts the cost, whether you have sufficient to finish it." The question is, it almost makes it as though it is an obvious thing. Is it not an obvious thing that by the time you're saying this is the amount of money I'm going to spend in a month, you've actually sat down and asked yourself, how much is it going to cost me? And you put it together. If it is in the running of your life, the Bible is almost asking, is it not obvious? I mean, is it not obvious for someone to sit down to count that, then the cost? It's almost like it is a given, and it's almost like it will not say it is almost like a fool who will not sit down and actually do a proper budget. Which of you intending to build will sit down and not count the cost? Who is that who cannot count the cost? We must all count the cost. And the idea of budgeting and accounting it is unfortunate that many of us, even this finance class, many of us are learning them in our latter years. It is unfortunate. We were all supposed to be taught as children. I remember sitting down with a group of young people, and I asked them, when was the first time you ever bought your first dress? Many people said, oh, when I joined campus. Or when did you ever buy for yourself some clothes for yourself or some things for yourself? Or when I joined campus and I was allowed to go and study on my own. That was just recently. And I was like, oh my goodness, these children never learned from a young age to go and buy things for themselves. The Bible, Spirit of Prophecy tells us in the book Child Guidance, when very young, children should be educated to read, when very young, to write, and to do what? To understand figures and to keep their own accounts. Teach your children, give them 50 shillings. You want a dress? Here is 100 shillings. Go buy for yourself that dress. And you are the one to budget how much you have in your account, then the limit of the dress you need to buy, and come back, write it down and save it from a very young age. And you can see how old this young child is at the age when they're just reading and they're learning to read and to write and to understand figures. That's also the same time you should be teaching them to keep their own accounts. Teach your children to understand money at an extremely young age. When they are just reading and writing, teach them to understand money. Not to say, oh, that is for mom to plan for you. That is for mom to do this for you. Things that your children can do for themselves, teach them. We are told that the spendthrift boy will be the spendthrift man, and the selfish and the self-caring girl will be the same kind of woman. This is a very good lesson for young people here, even who are considering marriage. Probably if the person you are considering is a spendthrift, probably those habits started at a very, very young age. They were trained like that from a very young age. So for those of us here who have children and who have young ones, teach them from a very young age. Immediately they just learn to read and write. when they just learn to read and write. Teach them to learn how to budget. And I want to give you examples of budgets, and then we can go through them and understand proper principles of budgeting. This looks like an amazing budget, right? We've catered for almost everything: rent, food, and I'm making an assumption this person probably earns 100,000 in gross. We've calculated utilities, we've catered for clothing, we've catered for transport, we've catered for recreation, and total is 63,000 shillings. Friends, this is not a budget. This is a list of expenses. This is not a budget at all. And many of us, this is how we actually budget. We just write down and say, these are all the things I need, and this is the amount of money that I need, and that's it. And this is my budget. This is not a budget. This is a list of expenses. So proper budgeting is even understanding where do you start from. And by the way, even before I go to where to start from, let me just talk about tools of budgeting. It doesn't matter whether you use an app on your phone, you write it on a piece of paper, you go and get a fancy tool. We don't need the fanciest tool. We just need you to be able to budget in the simplest form and manner that you can understand. Even a very small piece of paper or a sheet that you can track every single month or week, depending on how quickly and fast to budget. So this is a proper budget. Your budget should always begin with your income. Gross income, then net income. I'm putting there gross income because your tithe is a percentage of your gross income. Your tithe is a percentage of your gross income. So put it there and you calculate your 10% from there. And let me pause here and just say something about income. It's not just about the money you've earned from a business that you have, or the money that you have earned from your employer every single month. This income includes, you've gone for a speaking appointment and you've come back and you were given something, it should be added here. You went and visited your aunt or your grandmother and your grandmother gave you 3,000 shillings. You're not supposed to say, I have an extra, by the way, let's go out and eat. I just got this money that I did not plan for. You need to be intentional and put it here. Your income includes anything that comes, whether as gifts or whether income that has been earned directly from your hard work. Either gift or a donation or a grant, whatever it is, should be included on those first two lines. Write it down. So you receive it in the middle of the month, put it away. Next month, you're going to write it down that my income was higher because these are all the gifts that I received. And this is all the money that I received. Anything you receive, including someone gave you, this is your facilitation fee for having come to visit us or something, or to speak or to record. Put it there. That is part of your income. Every single coin must be accounted for. Remember what that quotation I read you earlier in the week? It says, take care of the pennies and the dollars will take care of themselves. Every penny, even in income, should be included. I've put this list in order of priorities. Then from there, once you have listed your income, then start listing your expenses. Goes without saying, your tithe does not belong to you. 10% of your gross income given back to God. Given back to God. So put it right there. Offering. The next point. Now, I know our churches today recommend that after you've given your 10%, give 10% as combined offering. Biblically, there is no direction on what percentage of offering is there. What our churches have given us is a recommendation, but offering should be a free will offering, from what God has given you. And it is from the increase that you have. It is the increase that you have received. Give a percentage of it. And as you increase, give another percentage, a percentage from your increase. There is no limitation on this. There is no minimum on this. The point is, give as much as you can. But if you sit down and you calculate all the offerings that the children of Israel used to give, they would almost give up to 24 to 25% of all that they had. If you count down all the number of offerings, depending on which feast or that feast that they had, it would almost add up to 24, 25%. There is no minimum, there is no maximum. The church today only gives us a direction. But what God desires here is a heart that is willing to give freely and entirely from the bottom of their hearts. That is all. God here will only check the heart. And I will show you a quotation just briefly on this. And secondly, put your savings and debt. I should have switched these two. Your savings, and I'm putting here debt, just in case there are people here who are in debt. The reason I'm putting it together, I'm assuming that there's someone who might be in debt. But if no debt, it should just be your savings. Please remember that the recommended amount for your savings is 20%. Now, I have only put 10%. I'm assuming the Kenyan situation. Someone earning 100,000 shillings, you can see it is actually not a lot of money. You can see it's not a lot of money once you start breaking it down. I was actually doing it and putting together the budget for someone earning 100,000 shillings, and tears were almost coming to my eyes, realizing that most Kenyans must actually be living in want. And I realized that there are even things that I'm putting here that most Kenyans cannot afford. And then I realized, Kenyans must be living outside of their budget lines, because I do not understand how people can afford certain lifestyles. But this is 100,000 shillings, assuming this as a young person or a one-income household, and it is probably 100,000 shillings. I do not know. But your savings should be at least 20%. And the reason I'm putting it with debt is so that if you have debt, it comes in the same line and it reduces your savings automatically. Why? We said debt should be paid as fast as possible. And then afterward, remember your investment. Investment here could be, I'm preparing to retire at some point. I want to have invest some money in some bond. I want to put some money in some money market fund, so that after I've retired, I have something. Put that line there. Or I am saving up for a house. I'm putting it together. Put that money there. Investment. Then after that, calm down now and look at how much can I afford in terms of my expenses. So you remember, pay yourself first, invest first. And investment, by the way, is optional depending on how much money you have. On rent, you start with rent because housing should be prioritized. And here I just want to pause and say the recommended budget amount for rent is 30% of your gross income. But again, as you can see, even 30% for 100,000 shillings is not even possible for this amount of money. So I just put a general amount. But rent, essentially 30% of your gross income. Why do we say that? Because when it comes to housing, do not compromise, one, on the health of your family, number two, on the comfort of your family, and on your own safety. You're coming from work late at 10 p.m., then you're going to live in a place where you have to pass through areas that compromise your safety and security because you're saving. No, that is the calculation of a fool. Make sure that you take care of your safety. Then I've put food, utilities, clothing, and all these other things. I may come down here to mention something else. Maintenance. And this is where most people go wrong when they are doing their budgets. Now, let me just take an example of someone who owns a car. And the insurance of your car is 70,000 shillings that you have to pay probably in November. That money should have been budgeted every single month, all the way from November of 2023. That means that you are putting aside 70,000 divided by 12 and amortizing that month for 12 months, so that by the time November hits and 70,000 comes knocking, you have enough money for maintenance. That includes even if you have a car and you know your car incurs maintenance. We are not going to be getting shockers in your budget. You always provision a budget for the maintenance of your car, the maintenance of your house, whether you use it or not. Put it away. You are putting it away, even if you're putting it away as a 200 shillings per month, while we do not know when it is going to come and knock. So amortize those costs over a longer period of time. Those you are definitely going to incur. Put them in a budget line so that then November it's going to come hitting, but I already amortized it, and there is no stress. You'll not start calling, my insurance is just coming up and I don't have money. No. You thought about it well in advance. Welfare as well. The Bible tells us that the poor will always be amongst us. So put a percentage. The way there's a percentage for investment, savings, offering tithe, put a percentage. And as it increases, it will also increase. As it increases, it will also increase. This is essentially a very simplified way for you to budget. But remember, the point is, take care of the pennies and the dollars will take care of themselves. I'll give you an example. I think I have 4 minutes left, but I'm very sorry. I'll give you an example of what I have learned in my own experience and what I also actually also do, and I will recommend. When you get your income for the first day of the month, don't sit down and say, I'm going to think about it and then I'll just start spending the money. Before any coin goes out, calm down, sit, and start taking a record of every single thing. And then on that day, pay out whatever can be paid out. Offering, send that money immediately. Tithe, send that money immediately. You remember, covetousness, anything that can be saved or given, do it as fast as possible. As fast as rent, pay it that day. We usually, in our home, we usually dedicate a simple time once all the income has come in, and we sit down and we send everything that needs to be sent. We put aside money for fuel, clothing, food, recreation, everything. And what I get a small stipend. Even if I'm earning an income, under recreation, there's a stipend I'm getting as though it is, in a sense, pocket money. And everything else has been allocated. That means by the time you are looking at my budget, there is zero at the end of that day. And if there is anything that is required outside of that budget and that the request did not come early, that is it. It is gone. It will be considered in the next budget. So I will remember to tell my husband, please remember this month I want you to consider this, and then he will put a point note and note that I'm going to add this for my wife, and it will be added as a budget line there. Anything that was forgotten, it has been forgotten until the next budget. And if people call you to tell you, hey, please, Siju, what and what and what, and black tax keeps coming and knocking, just tell them, not this month, I will consider it next month. And next month, if it fits in your budget, you put it there. If it does not fit again, communicate openly. I am unable to do this. Remember, you have a welfare fund where all those things, including your black tax issues, they fall within that category, depending on your needs. That includes, and some people here will have probably a separate line for parents. If you're supporting your parents, for example, yes, add the lines that you need. But if someone, this happened, if you cannot give that month, you cannot give. You don't have it. Your budget is complete. So why is someone calling you on the 13th of the month and you have money to give? Where is it coming from? I expect you to have already budgeted and spent and sent out all your money by the 13th of the month. Weird costs, where are they coming from? They have to wait the next month, unless you have not yet spent your welfare amount. Does that make sense? It sounds very strict. It might even sound very mean. But friends, without planning like this, we will always have money bleeding out of our pockets. So tell someone, please remember it. Remember it before I budget the next month. Then I will consider it. You sit down and you do it properly. And as we sit down, what we usually do, we come back and we check. So how much did we spend? Okay, so it seems we are spending less on food. Then let us actually increase our savings. It seems that we are spending more on clothing. What can we reduce? Can we go to a toy market, for example? Can we go and buy our food in bulk, for example? So we sit down and we do an account. And I will recommend, I remember when I was getting married, people were telling me, this is for the married people. People were telling me, please keep your own money. Keep your own money. Yeah. Let me tell you, brothers and sisters. And again, you might hate me for this, but transparency and openness and honesty, especially in matters finance, is a hedge and a safeguard for your family. Whether or not, I remember the last time we did this presentation, please forgive me, I'm taking a bit of time. I'm about to close. I know time is up. Let me just mention this and I will close. I remember when we did this meeting the last time, someone asked me, just the presentation was good, but what about if I earn more money than my husband, and my husband feels threatened? Leadership in your home, even in marriage, was given to the man by God. And so even in financial decisions, let your husband lead, unless he has a serious challenge and he's those people, Ellen White will say, they're not worthy to be called husbands. Unless that is the challenge, you should allow them to lead. And I even feel bad saying allowing, because it's not like you're allowing, because he was already ordained by God. You're not giving him the gift of leadership. It already exists. Submit, even if you're earning more, submit in the point of your budget collectively and honestly. Put it together and account for it together. And account for it and make sure there are no pockets, there are no holes, nowhere. If your in-laws have come in and they've said, Jess, can you consider this and that? If it is the in-laws from the wife, make sure you separate. If it is from the husband, let the husband be the one to own communication to the in-laws, and let you be the one to own communication to the other in-laws. Separate them so that then it is known. No one will be coming here, my husband, the family comes and asks for money and I didn't know he gave them and he gave them. If you sat down and did it honestly, and then you became the ambassador in his home. If the mother needs money, let the mother call you as the woman. If the father needs money, no, I know it's not a marriage thing, but it affects budgeting. It affects budgeting. That's the only reason I am mentioning it. Please. Then something else I wanted to mention for young people. Young people want to say, oh my goodness, I need to live in my own place. But you're starting out your first job and you earn 70,000 shillings or you earn 100,000 shillings, and you want to have a place where you can compete and your friends can come and see and you live well and you say, oh, I live in such and such a place and I am looking okay and I'm looking good. Young people, you can see even with 100,000 shillings, 15,000 is not a lot of money for you to live in certain places. And what I advise young people, you know what? Humble yourself. Humble yourself. There's a trick that I always give my young friends who are just leaving campus, and I tell them, there are some places where you cannot live and your security is guaranteed. In this country, for example, you will live in some places, yes, you're paying your 15,000, but you're not sure you will get home and your things are safe. So what do I recommend if you're just young and out of campus? Please capitalize on getting a servant's quarter. You will end up living in a good neighborhood, smelling fresh air, but you're paying very little money. You will end up living in Karen, or you'll end up living in Lower Kabete, or in a place that's very good, but there's a servant's quarter, you're paying a small amount of money, you're smelling fresh air, and you're enjoying the security of the main house. Capital, don't say, people say, people will say I live in a servant's quarter, then it doesn't. No one cares. And many of them nowadays are being made so well. Because where are you going to live with 15,000 shillings? It might end up being an insecure place. So remember, at the end of the day, one, consider the poor. The Bible says the poor will always be amongst us. Remember them. And Ellen White will write and say, it is the worthy poor. It is the worthy poor. Those who have found themselves in circumstances which they did not even desire. They have worked hard diligently, but life has happened and suffering has happened. And I remember, I forgot to put a quotation here, which I'll mention it tomorrow and I'll share it with you, that she even says, these things where people come and say, so and so, they have this problem and that has happened. She says, who's the first person of contact? The family. She says, let the families take care of their own people. And so when we start doing due diligence and say, where is their family? We are actually following counsel that is first found in the Bible. In the book of Psalms 58, giving us the counsel of fasting and of those who will be the repairers of the breach. We are told those people do not forget their flesh. So we should not be forgetting their flesh, and we will start from there. Are we saying that all families, all cases, people should be taken care of by their families? No, we are saying no. We are saying there are cases where the church will have to step in. But the first point of due diligence will be the family. Why? We are protecting this budget. Things will not be bleeding out of the pocket, recklessly here and there. It was zero at the end of the month because everything was already spent. Food was bought on the first day of the month after salary came in. All that money has already been allocated. So where will you get money? Welfare only. And the welfare amount, you can see with the 100,000 shillings, it is probably quite small, but God will lead you on the percentage. Avoid extravagance. Useless articles in the house, raffles, fancy dresses. There are friends of mine who every time there's a new handbag, there's a new dress, there's a new watch. If you have set a particular budget, you don't have to buy a new dress for every single event you're going for. There's a new wedding, dress. There's a dress. Useless things and fancy things only to please people who probably do not even like you, only to please people. Avoid extravagance. This is a quotation that I also wanted to share with you, that our God is not a taskmaster and does not require the poor man to give means to the cause that belong to his family, that should be used to keep them in comfort and above pinching want. And sometimes we even guilt trip people and tell them the Bible has said, the church has recommended, give us 10% of your offering, but that person is earning 30,000 shillings. If they were to give even an offering of 10,000, the family would be above want. And that's why God did not put a restriction on what the offering percentage is. Are we not saying that you should give offering? You should give it freely, but we should not. God is not a taskmaster where he wants you to be above pitching want, or your family not to have the comforts of this life. And comforts are the necessities that you need your family to run well and to be comfortable as they live here. I also wanted to mention this because, again, I said, let us avoid extremities. And this is the story of Brother Linga, a man who was a wealthy man, or he was okay, but he was told that he followed the principles of strictest economy. But remember, this man, we are told that they did not have a courage until I told them it was their duty to provide for what? Their wife a carriage. They did not have a car. I'm not saying we should all have cars, but I'm just saying the comforts, the conveniences we need to operate well. If someone can afford them, do not be too miserly when you're running your budget. And Ellen White writes and says, please buy for your wife a car, okay? Okay, in this case, it is a carriage. I'm just trying to interpret it in our times. Allow your wife to move comfortably, to move. She has children, she has things, she's running up and down. Provide conveniences to lighten the labor of your wife. That is the last quotation. To say, I know you're giving, and this man was not doing anything wrong. He was giving all money to the cause of God. But she says, you cannot be economizing and your family is not comfortable. Your family is not comfortable. So this is to provide for you both sides. Don't be extreme, say we should not even own cars, or don't be and despise money, or don't idolize it and be too extravagant. Again, remember, godliness is profitable unto all things, having promise of the life that now is and of that which is to come. Again, I apologize for coming in late. I want to pause right there. Sorry that we have gone overboard with time.
Thank you so much, Jess, for your presentation. May the Lord bless you. Do we have time to take a question or two? Jess?
I do have the time. I only feel sorry for the audience that has been here longer.
Okay. I think we can do one question.
All right.
Okay, there is a question here. If someone has a hospital as a business with both inpatient and outpatient, how should the same the same operate on Sabbath? I think operate on Sabbath.
Sorry, come again?
If someone has a hospital as a business and they have inpatient and outpatient, how should they operate during the Sabbath?
That's a very good question. I can share with you the references for this later on, but essentially the direction that is given, if you are doing benevolent work, any work that is you're taking care of the sick, you are honoring, you are healing, doing the work of healing, any work that is benevolent, including running a hospital, it can be done on Sabbath. But the condition is all the income earned on that day belongs to God, all of it. It is not yours. So it can be run, but the income is God's.
Amen. Thank you. A question here. Malachi says, bring all tithes. Does it include the tithe for the poor? Why don't we have, as a church, have a tithe for the poor like in the Old Testament? Yet we adopted the Old Testament tithing.
That's wonderful. Just to mention that tithe was established in the all the way from the book of Genesis, even before the nation of Israel was set up, all the way from Abraham there was tithing, and it has continued on all the way to the New Testament. So it's maybe a more detailed study that we cannot do today to show that the tithe is there in both the Old Covenant and in the New Covenant, if you study the two covenants. But when the tithe was established, there's a difference between tithe and then the offering. And there's also the work for the poor. When the children of Israel were instructed to go and harvest, they were told, harvest from your farm, but remember to leave a percentage, to leave a bit of it for the poor. That is how Jesus and the disciples walked through the farm, and they were picking things on the Sabbath. They were gleaning. Or Ruth, remember Ruth gleaning from the farm of Boaz. It was allowed for them to come and glean. And that's why when I presented the budget, I left welfare there, so that once you have harvested everything and you have used up, you have left a bit of it for the poor. Remember, in our own household, we have a line we call here, I've called it welfare to understand, but we call it the poor fund. The poor will always be among you. A percentage should be left for them. So don't harvest everything. And it is very different and distinct from the tithe.
Okay, the last question. We usually teach and focus individual stewardship, but we ignore corporate stewardship for the church as the body. And we watch too much waste happening and even burden the church members. For instance, why must the storehouse of God start from the conference upwards and not from the local church upwards?
I didn't. Why the storehouse? Now that is a very complex question. I'm not sure that I would have the answers. I would have to have a pastor probably help me answer this, if there is one, or a church elder who might be amongst us here to help us answer one. But what I would say is that in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, if there's a church that has the best order for giving and systematic benevolence, the way it is done all the way to the top, it is the Seventh-day Adventist Church. It caters for our pastors in a way many of the churches outside here have not been catered for. Now, will we say that there is mismanagement that goes on with the funds? We are aware that it is there, yes. Are we saying that there's a lot of pressure that comes upward to our local church pastors who may be struggling? The answer is actually yes. And so that is when also, even in our part for offering, we should remember not just those who are ministering around us, but even the evangelists. We should give our tithe because God commanded it. But even in our offering, remember also to give people around us, the cause of mission work around us, the cause of local church budgets around us. Apportion your tithe your offering as God directs you. But remember all those other workers that are around us and are ministering to the cause of God. Why it was established that way, I do not know, but I know that it was in the wisdom of God, because it is a system that God has ordained in our church for a long time. Ellen White received a whole vision on systematic benevolence. I think it should be obeyed.
Amen. Just one more. Where do you draw the line between benevolence and budgeting? Sometimes you feel bad for not helping even when you're out of budget.
Yes. I think a lot more sacrifice is required from the children of God. The reason why we budget is so that you can stay within a limit. And it is unfortunate that many of us have not learned the subject of boundaries. A big part of budgeting is learning to have a boundary line with other people. Is it sad that there are times you cannot give? The answer is actually yes. Because remember, you're increasing your capacity to probably be able to give in the next month or in the other month, and you'll continually remember these causes. The thing is that as the ones come into your life, start asking yourself, the Lord, is this a budget line that I need to add? In the next month, just add that budget line. If God leads you to add your budget line for benevolence, put it there. The thing is that it should be budgeted for and accounted for. And when you don't have, sincerely, you don't have, say no and say it courteously. Many of us just need to learn how to actually say no. I also struggle with it, I must say. I struggle saying no to people. But we have also been duped and lied to by many people who come in the name of benevolence. And because they just know that you cannot say no because you're a Christian. But it will help if you drew the budget line very well.
Amen. Thank you so much, Jess, for the time. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, everyone, for your patience and good listening. May the Lord bless us. May we meet tomorrow in the evening. May God bless you and have a good night. So we are going to have our final prayer. Just kindly offer the last prayer.
Father, thank you. We need more of your wisdom. Please help us individually to know in what areas of our budget we can sacrifice more for your cause. Please also help us to know in what areas of our budget we can be better stewards. And for those of us who are living above pinching want, who need you to come through in their finances, Lord, I pray that you who gives the power to get wealth, you may give that power to your children who are in here, desirous. They're saying, Lord, I want to be a better manager, but I have nothing to manage. I pray that you may give them the blessing of increasing their income or giving them new jobs or even jobs that they do not have. I pray you may supply for the needs of your children, for we ask, trusting and believing in Jesus' name. Amen.